Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. So, I think a little context is required about my family before I tell you exactly what happened. My grandparents on my father's side are Mormons, and my parents were excommunicated by the church even before they got married. They respect the values of their faith, but over time, they have relaxed their worldview by a lot. It doesn't mean that they have completely accepted the modern ways. Even though they have given us the freedom to go out and just be ourselves, we still follow a few rules. Neither me nor my sister is allowed to skip Sunday prayers, even though I'm an atheist. We are still not allowed to date until we turn 16. And my sister is specially called out by my mom when she opts for a dress that shows too much skin. Maybe it's the ingrained rules that my parents grew up with, but they still follow these things. Now, my sister was about to turn 14 last week, and she came to me with a request. She told me that there's a guy she likes who has asked her to go to the skate rink on her birthday. She asked me if I could help her out as she really wants to do this, and all her friends already go out and have fun. Even though I'm 17 and have grown out of the restrictive phase of my childhood, I knew how she felt. It's hard to watch all your friends have fun and just live their lives while you have to miss out on every experience because of your parents' faith. So I empathized with her. Any other day, I might have hesitated a lot. But because she was asking me to help her have this single date on her birthday, so I told her I'd make it happen, even though I knew how strict my parents were and how much trouble we could get into if they found out. But I really wanted her to just live her life as a normal teenager on that day. I thought a lot about what excuse we could make that our parents wouldn't suspect her. She is allowed to go out only if she's being chaperoned by either me or one of our parents. So the easy part was I could go with her and no one would suspect a thing. The problem was what excuse we could make to leave the house on her birthday around 6 p.m. when we don't even go out that often. My parents weren't born yesterday, and they knew all too well what it means to go out on a birthday. Finally, I figured the best lie is to weave the story around truth as much as you can. And that's exactly what I did. I talked to my mom and told her I'll be going out on Tuesday. That's when her birthday was. My excuse was that I needed to go to the bookshop to buy a few books I'll be needing for my advanced classes, and because my sister loves books, maybe she could come with me and see something she likes. It'll be a birthday gift to her from me. It wasn't too far off the mark because it's true that my sis likes reading a lot, and that's the one thing my parents encourage us to do that counts as sort of an entertainment. They say that any kind of book is sure to make you a little wiser, and that's why I knew my mom wouldn't question that excuse. So on Tuesday, I took my sister out and we went to the skating rink. Now, the problem was that I actually needed to buy books as proof that we went to the shop. So I told my sister I'll finish up with that while she enjoys her time skating. I was a little worried because she isn't used to being all alone even though she's 14. But our time was limited and I didn't have any other choice. Everything went perfectly, and by the time I went back to my sister, I could see from her face she just had the time of her life. I told her we have to go because we were cutting it close. I didn't want mom to get suspicious at all, and that included being back in the house within 2 hours. The day went by smoothly, and that night my sis hugged me and thanked me for letting her go out. I was really proud that I was able to pull it off for her. But yesterday, I came back home from school to find my mom more angry than I've ever seen her. As soon as I walked into the living room, she started shouting at me for lying to her and taking my sister out. Somehow, she found out about the incident. I still don't know how she found out, but now that she knew about it, I could clearly see the rage coming. I wasn't prepared for the consequences of my actions. My mom shouted herself hoarse at me, especially for leaving my sister alone with another boy when she's only 14. She told me I have disrespected the trust she placed in me and have made fun of their faith. Being an atheist, I know it's hard for me to ever see eye to eye with my parents on anything or to even grasp the emotions she was feeling. But I knew better than to argue with her. I was thinking of letting her take it all out and not saying anything, but instead she kicked me out of the house. She said that after what I've done, I don't deserve to live there, and being removed from the place I called home would teach me a lesson or two about life. I didn't expect her to do something that extreme, but now that she has done it, I couldn't do anything about it. I thought waiting for my dad and appealing to him would help me, but when he came back home and heard what happened, he completely supported her decision. He didn't raise his voice or raise a hand. He just told me to get off their property and never come back. But that was not all. One of our neighbors who saw me sitting outside all day while waiting for Dad was keeping an eye on what was happening called the cops on my parents for kicking out an underage child. The cops asked all sorts of questions and after a while said that they are going to call the CPS just to run an investigation and make sure we're being taken care of. No one is ignorant about the ways the system works in America. My parents knew what the involvement of CPS meant, so they took me back in. But now they are dealing with two social workers who are questioning me and my sister separately. They still haven't determined anything, but it's clear that my parents are in trouble. To be honest, my parents didn't really do anything bad to us, but I know that after I go to college next year, my sister wouldn't have anyone protecting her. And that's why I'm thinking of helping out with CPS workers so that they can take her away and get her a home that would help her live her life in the best way possible. Would that make me an a-hole? Should I or should I not do it? So I found out how my mom knew about me taking my sister out on her birthday to have fun. Apparently, the woman who works as a part timer at the skating rink works a second job at the grocery store. I didn't see her there that day because I was too stressed about the whole lie and had to run back and forth between the bookshop, which was on the opposite side of the town. If I had seen her, I would have taken my sister back instantly because I know she's a really good friend of my mom. She told Mom about how she was surprised to see my mom letting my sis go out with her friends. She just wanted to express how happy it made her feel to my sis having fun for the first time, and in the process, she caused this whole shit show. I don't know whether to laugh or cry right now. The CPS is still on my parents' case, and I haven't told them anything that could possibly hint at my parents being bad at their job. But even without me saying anything, there are ways this could all go south real fast. And overall, it's enough to say that Mom and Dad are having the worst time ever. So I saw that many of you replied to my original post and said how bad being in the system could be, and my sis might end up with a foster family that is worse than mine. I actually understand your point of view, and I wasn't really thinking straight when I said I should get my parents into trouble. I was just so angry at them because of how easily they kicked me out of the house just because I let my sister have some fun in her life. I don't know why they are so rigid about their beliefs and following rules even after being excommunicated by their church. If anything, they should be an advocate for how conservative and backward the ways of living of some of these communities can be. I mean, if they'll just take a look at any normal kid, they'll realize how easy they've got it. I don't do 90% of the shit some of my classmates get up to, and it's just so maddening sometimes that even after being an overachiever in studies, I have to follow all these rules, and my sister has it even worse than me. I know I'm almost out of here because soon I'll be going to college, but I still worry about my sister and how she's going to survive without me here to keep her company. Finally, the CPS backed off and everyone in my home was able to relax. They tried to pass off my parents as having an unhealthy relationship and not giving us adequate space to grow up mentally, but were unable to do so. In the end, because my parents had no past history that could work against them, they had to give up and leave us alone. I played an important part in it. When they asked me why I was kicked out of the house, I told them I wasn't and that I had an argument with my mom and I left the house on my own. I told them it was a silly thing because she wouldn't even let me stay out all night without my parents, even though I'm almost an adult. Actually, I wasn't about to do it, but a few nights ago I had a talk with my parents. I took advice from a few people here and used the situation to negotiate with my parents. I told them what my thoughts are about their way of living and how, even though I appreciate their love and the freedom they gave me, they need to understand the generation gap between them and us and meet us halfway. I asked them to let my sis have a little more freedom, at least enough to go out with her friends unsupervised under a curfew, and that they should have an open mind about what we want and listen to us seriously before saying it's wrong or we shouldn't do something just because Almighty God wills it. Of course, it was a heated discussion, and I did fear that they'll really kick me out again, but thankfully, after a few hours of argument, they were able to understand where I was coming from. I just hope that in the future they'll actually keep their promise and hear us out instead of trying to force their beliefs on us. NTA, I don't think you're an a-hole, but if you knowingly help out CPS to take you and your sister away, then you'll be one. CPS doesn't give a crap about kids, and they'll just shove you to any family that's willing to let kids in, even if it meant working as a slave for them. NTA, I think you're careless and immature because no matter what belief system you're coming from, you shouldn't have left your sister all alone the very first time she went out to an unknown place. Secondly, CPS could throw you into a foster family of 10 where you will have to fight for bread and you wouldn't know if they'll provide for you like your parents do. So don't pull something that you can end up regretting. I'm currently 8 months pregnant, on bed rest due to hypertension, and recently had surgery to remove a cyst that was causing a lot of problems. Because of this, we qualified for home care as my husband couldn't take time off work to help out around the house. I'm a stay at home mom to a 1 year old girl and a 2.5 year old boy. The nurse comes in and helps me to do some day to day activities, monitors the baby and errands. Now, to earlier this week, I'm severely allergic to ragweed, and it's more than just regular seasonal allergies. I went outside for a few minutes to grab something and started getting a reaction as it's ragweed season in my area. My eyes were stinging, and I went inside before it got worse. The home nurse was out running an errand, so I was alone with my kids. With it also being cold, flu season, both the kids were sick and utterly miserable, and my daughter was being extra clingy. I lay down on the couch with her on my chest, and she finally fell asleep. I didn't want to move her as she hadn't been able to sleep well through the night and she needed rest. I closed my eyes to get a little relief from the stinging, but I did not fall asleep. My eyes were just closed due to the pain of the allergic reaction. The nurse came in from her errand and incorrectly assumed I had fallen asleep on the couch with my daughter. She jostled me to wake me up, waking my daughter up as well, and started scolding me for being irresponsible and negligent falling asleep on the couch with a baby. I tried to comfort my daughter and explain to the nurse that I was not sleeping. I had just closed my eyes because they were hurting. The nurse wouldn't listen and went on and on about how negligent I was and threatened to call CPS for child endangerment. I told her to go ahead because I have camera footage from our home security camera and they wouldn't find nothing short of a loving home. I told her that her behavior was inexcusable and she wasn't taking the time to listen to me or my explanation. I told her she needed to leave and I'll be contacting her employer, which I did. I told them I'd like a new caretaker and provided all the info and evidence I had as I was no longer comfortable with her. A new caretaker came the next day, and I thought that was that. They had sent a replacement, and the other nurse was probably placed with another patient. Well, yesterday I got a Facebook message from her cussing me out for getting her fired and how I'm an AH and she's still going to report me and my kids will get taken away. I don't think I did anything wrong by sending the video to her employer, but my husband said I just could have requested a new nurse without stirring the pot. AITA? I would like to preface this by saying I was not asleep on the couch, as I'm not a reckless person. And TA, if she's a mandated reporter, then she could have handled her concern in a professional way. Either way, a decent person could have gently tried to wake you without scaring the baby and also have compassion and understand that you needed help, not judgment. Also, that's not a reason to call CPS anyway, so this is just ridiculous. I wouldn't allow that person back in my home. NTA, it sounds like it isn't the first time she acted like this. Regardless, if you were asleep or not, at the end of the day, she's at work and she can't talk to people like that, especially clients. Granted, there's probably more liberties you can take in this context, especially if she actually believes that CPS need to be involved. But the way she acted was still unprofessional. You didn't stir the pot. You stopped someone who was clearly unsuitable for the job from causing more harm. As is the case in a lot of these situations, you didn't get her fired. She got herself fired and is mad that she got caught. I, 24 female, have been with my boyfriend, 24, off and on within a span of 5 years, but total time together would be more like 3.5 years. This last time we got back together, his only condition was that we move closer to his family in a different state, almost an 8 hour drive from where my family lives. My boyfriend said it was time I grew up and got out in the real world, and that this was the best way to do so. He's always said I should want bigger things for myself and that this town was holding me back. After talking with my family, they of course warned me to be cautious and think on it. But my boyfriend was constantly in my ear about how I'll never be able to become my own person if I stay and continue being babied by them, and that this was my one shot to make this relationship work. Needless to say, I was rushed to a decision. I was living with him, his mom, and his stepdad for 6 months, and it's been hell. I don't have my own car. I don't know anyone here. And since I haven't been able to register that I live in this state now, I haven't been able to find a proper job. His stepdad got me a job that pays under the table as a dishwasher. They ended up firing me because his mom, who also works there, complained about needing more tasks to work more hours. I then became their maid, basically. They wanted me to cook for them, clean after them, even put their clothes away for them while they were all at work or out doing God knows what. One night, I realized how helpless I felt, and I texted my mom. She offered to pick me up, and with the same spur of the moment decision I made to get there, I made it again to go home. He left around 5 a.m. for work, and I began packing my things in our room. His mom and stepdad made their way out a few hours later, and eventually my mom showed up with my brother to drive back, and we left. When we finally came home, and I checked my phone, surprisingly, only had a couple of messages. Boyfriend was heartbroken, said his mom feels guilty for treating me the way she did, but she was only protecting her son, and that I should have told him I was leaving instead of running away like a child. He said he just got the $20 ready to give me when he got off work and take me to get my license changed. I told him I was sorry, but I didn't know what else to do and I was homesick. He said all he wanted was for me to be honest and speak up. I thought I was making the right call and that he'd understand, but I do wonder if it would have been better to voice my opinion instead of running away. AITA? NTA. Ironic that he told you this was a way of getting out into the real world only to stick with his parents. That man was trying to isolate you, so you had no other option but to stay with him. Don't go back. So you needed to get away from home to become your own person, but he continued to stay home and be what exactly? You were an unpaid housekeeper. You should send him and his family an invoice for considerably more than 20 measly bucks. And just to make sure you're aware, there's no way he was going to get you that license. They'd lose their maid. He just said that to make you feel guilty and maybe guilt trip you into coming back. I'm guessing that tactic has worked before. Anyway, stay away from all of them. Be your best self in safety. NTA so much.